Final Fantasy VII came out in 1997, released for the PS1, and everybody knew about it. Even if you didn't like RPGs, you knew about Final Fantasy VII. If you didn't have a PS1, chances are you were wanting to go get one just to play Final Fantasy VII. Keep in mind, I'm taking you back, kind of like on a time machine and shit, with AlphaOmegaSin at the helm and whatnot. I'm taking you back to what it was like back then. It was a big deal. Seeing a commercial for it for the first time literally just blew people's fucking minds. Nobody had any idea, like, games could ever look like this. You know, this was literally like a summer blockbuster fucking movie that everybody wanted to go see. So Final Fantasy VII naturally became a very big deal. As a matter of fact, for many gamers out there, this was their first Final Fantasy, this was their first RPG. It was a very, very big deal. This pretty much opened up the floodgates for not only Squaresoft at that time, now known as Square Enix since the merger, but this opened up the floodgates for them, and it opened up the floodgates for the PlayStation, and it opened up the floodgates for a genre that pretty much at the time was still rather niche by comparison to everything else that was available. So Final Fantasy VII is a very big deal. Whether you look at the game as an overrated piece of shit, or you look at it as a beloved gem that has given you many hours of awesome gameplay goodness, remains to be seen. That's completely irrelevant. See, the entire point to this video is that recently there was a shareholder meeting at Square Enix, okay? And they discussed various topics because, I mean, shareholders naturally want to know exactly what's going to be put out there and how they're going to be making their money back. Well, one of those things that came up was FF7. Yoichi Wada went and came forward and gave his exact reasoning as to why there isn't a remake and the only way that a remake would be possible. He said the reason that there isn't a remake is because the current slew of Final Fantasy games that have come out after Final Fantasy VII, according to him, and I guess according to Square Enix, have not exceeded the same exact quality that went into Final Fantasy VII. Now then, that means that the only way that they could release another Final Fantasy VII is by having one of those Final Fantasies that comes out after FF7 be better in terms of quality. What they really mean to say is, we want one that sells better. That's what they're really saying. It's not in terms of quality, because you can go through review after review and see that there's a lot of people that will like other Final Fantasies over Final Fantasy VII. Okay? And that's happened quite a few times. I run into lots of Final Fantasy fans that will go and name off all of their favorites and everything. Sure, 7 will come up in a lot of their lists, sometimes at the top, sometimes not even show up at all. But it's really just a matter of opinion. But realistically, what they're just saying is, we want one that has the same booming success, that puts us back onto the map, understandably so, but that's not exactly what they're saying up front. Now, it gets more interesting because it's like, this basically makes me feel like this is what they're doing. They're saying this to do one thing, and one thing only. If they realize that since 1997, Final Fantasy VII was their biggest Final Fantasy that they put out, and for years now, people have been asking for a flat-out remake. Since, let's be realistic, the game graphically has not held up, especially by comparison to 8, 9, 10, and so on and so forth, okay? Now, the reason I think there's a lot of logic behind this. The reason that I think that they would say such a thing is that they want people to go out there, buy the newer Final Fantasies, and see them sell like motherfucking gangbusters. Why else would you say something like that? It just makes sense. See, if our newer Final Fantasies sell even better, then we'll finally give you what you want. So you're not giving us what we want, and that's money. No. If all those people bought Final Fantasy VII, where were you for 8, and 9, and 10, and 12, and 13? Oh, and 10-2, and 13-2. You know, they'd be asking that exact question. Where were those millions and millions and millions of fans that all bought FF7? Here's the thing. Sometimes you hit a peak. That happens in the gaming world. Sometimes you will do the best. To me, the very best Super Mario Brothers is still Super Mario Brothers 3 on the NES, in my opinion. Other people might say Super Mario 64. A lot of people might say Super Mario Brothers 1. A lot of people might say, I don't know, Super Mario Galaxy, Super Mario World. It's a matter of opinion. Nintendo didn't say, well, you know what? I just feel like the quality isn't there because none of them sold like Super Mario Bros. 1, which technically, you know, has a sales that does because it was a pack-in title, but regardless, it'd be fucking asinine if they had the same exact kind of logic. Think about that. What about Resident Evil? Okay, I'm sure that Capcom didn't decide, we'll just quit making Resident Evil because we peaked right here and, well, we're gonna go and say this and hope everybody goes out and runs out and buys all the other ones. That would be fucking retarded. Any big franchise that is still around today, that has been around for years and years and years. If people have been demanding something, I mean a lot of people. This isn't just a handful of people. We're not talking about a couple hundred, we're not talking a couple thousand. Fuck, we're not even talking a couple 100,000. We're talking about millions. Millions and millions and millions and millions of fucking fans. Okay, that have been wanting this exact thing. We've had a lot of fans that have wanted this for so long that they stop giving a shit because they know it's not gonna fucking happen in their eyes. They're just like, they could give a fuck less. Oh, and you wanna know what? If we're gonna talk about the fact that Square Enix is doing that, it's like, hey, you want to know what also pisses a lot of people off? When we look at your catalog from PS1 and then everything that you did after that. On PS1, we had Brave Fencer Musashi, we had Air Guys, we had Einhander, we had Final Fantasy VII, Final Fantasy VIII, Final Fantasy IX, Final Fantasy Origins, Final Fantasy Anthology, Final Fantasy Chronicles. It's just, okay, had all that. Parasite Eve 1, Parasite Eve 2, Tobal number 1. Let me think of some others that came out. I can't off the top of my head. Oh, I'm sorry. Chrono Cross, Xenogears, Vagrant Story, okay. I could go on and on and on and on. As you get the idea, they were literally unfucking stoppable. They were the RPG machine, and they put out games of other genres that people were just like, fuck yeah, picking that stuff up and loving it. The problem, Square Enix, is that you aren't the same fucking company that you were back in the 90s, and that's why your shit doesn't sell like it did back then. Okay, you were taking a gigantic gamble by leaving Nintendo, going exclusively with Sony, okay, you know, a new platform at the time. Okay, the PS1 was brand new on the scene. There was no guarantee that they were going to go and sell. There was no guarantee. Nintendo was a tried and true brand that every single video game fan out in the world knew. It was a big gamble. Final Fantasy was the first Final Fantasy that they put out on a different console. It was the first disc-based one. It was a gigantic fucking deal on so many levels, and Sony backed the game too to make sure this shit was out there in the open. I still remember seeing video game ads, magazine ads rather, that showed the Junin canon. And it said, you know, tell the people that are still making cartridge-based games to, grab a blindfold and a match and everything and shit like that. And it was a direct attack at Nintendo. Okay, I remember shit like that. It was a big fucking deal. So much, Sony literally was fucking behind it. Like, fuck yeah. And it's kind of crazy to think about how monumental that title was. That's one of the reasons why it sold so fucking well. It sold well because of the time that it came out at. It was the right time, it was the right place, and it did the most for the fucking genre. It really did. Nobody can sit there and really argue that, well, Final Fantasy VII didn't do anything for the entire gaming community. Whether you love or hate it, it's a big fucking deal within gaming history. And we want a simple remake. The irony is that time and time again, they have said, well, that would take a lot of man hours, and that would take an entire development team, and that would take a lot of people to go and make it. Well, that's funny, because how long have you been working on Final Fantasy Versus? And where the fuck is that? I mean, that takes an entire team to make, and that takes a lot of money, and that takes a lot of man-hours, and you've had people salivating over the title the entire time that we've fucking seen any glimpse of it whatsoever, yet we still get nothing. I mean, that was in production, what, before PS3? And here we are now. Obviously, you do not give a fuck about giving people anything that they want. Okay, and you're trying to go and impress the fucking shareholders? Well, If you want to impress the shareholders, you're going to have to go and impress the fucking fans first. And that'll impress the shareholders because they'll see all the money that you're bringing in, literally. Just fucking pull out that rake and just bring all that fucking cash in and just jump in and fucking throw it about. Just like, hooray! Cocaine and fucking hookers for everybody. You, come on, yeah. Snort it off her fucking ass crack. Doesn't matter where she's been. We're all fucked up. But seriously, this is fucking ridiculous. You're now saying that's the reason? Look, you just want to go and make sure that the future Final Fantasy sales are there, and you're not giving a direct guarantee. That's the thing. You leave it in such vague words that nobody's guaranteed a single fucking thing. You're technically just dangling a fucking carrot in front of a horse, and let me go and tell you what it really is. You're dangling an empty fucking promise of Final Fantasy VII being remade in front of a bunch of fucking very loyal fans. And that, to me, is a whole bunch of fucking bullshit. I don't think that they're the same company that they used to. I used to put Squaresoft up on a fucking pedestal for years because they did nothing but make the best quality. And as time progressed, it seems to just have declined. You don't put out as many titles. You don't put out as much variety in titles. And when you do, when you put out something like The World Ends With You, you barely fucking put it out there for people to know about. It's like you don't want to go and back that game because you're like, I don't know. Makes no fucking sense. Oh, and let me throw out just one last tidbit. If people were begging for Final Fantasy VII to be remade, and people have been wondering what the fuck is up with Versus, then what about Kingdom Hearts 3? You know, the third entry in the Kingdom Hearts series. I mean, we have Kingdom Hearts 1, 2, and a whole bunch of other games, but we don't have a third fucking title still? After how many years? I mean, many of us, myself included, thought Kingdom Hearts 3 was going to be a launch title. Well, maybe it'll come out the first year it's out. Maybe the second year? Third? Fourth? Fifth? Well, shit. Is it ever coming out? It's funny because it's still not around. Still no fucking announcements. Don't understand. Again, it's a bunch of stuff that your fans come to expect from you. Then, when it doesn't happen, they demand of you. And then you make a bunch of bullshit reasons why it's not around. And you wonder why people are jumping ship to other companies that are making RPGs, like Xseed and Atlas and whatnot. Because you aren't following through, and that means that your name means less and less to the gaming community. So your shareholders might want to take all that into account. So, literally, by comparison, look at the books during PS1, look at all the stuff that you put out. Hell, look at all the dev teams that you had back then that you sure as shit don't have now. And then look at today, at what you have. I mean, hell, you wouldn't even give us a second Bouncer game. That seems kind of silly, because a lot of us actually like that game quite a bit. Ah, yes. I've rattled off a whole bunch of reasons, but I want to know, all of you out there in YouTube land, be honest, would you like to see FF7 be remade? I mean, from fucking scratch. And I mean made right. I'm not talking like they actually butchered a fucking script. I mean made right. Imagine, just in theory, that they make a perfect fucking remake and then add in a whole bunch more. Would you like to see something like that happen? Or do you think it's unnecessary, that it will go and pollute the name Final Fantasy VII, or the sheer fact that you just don't fucking like Final Fantasy VII, so a remake technically is irrelevant to you altogether? So it's like, why the fuck would it be remade? I don't give a fuck, and I sure as shit will never buy it. It's a big deal, it's a good debate, and it's kind of interesting to talk about, so that's why I'm talking about it right now. Anyway, you can share your thoughts in the comment box down below, because it's a comment box, and you can go and type out random shit, and that's what you can do, your little keyboard, or on your phone, or on your tablet, or whatever fucking random device that you're on. You could be on a PSP, or fucking any random thing, really. Or you can make a video response, like me, and you can go and dance about in front of the camera and whatnot, and do this whole thing, be like, yeah, bitch, you like that, don't you? Pelvic thrust to their face, they'll understand, they're a disgrace. Anyhow, so this is AlphaOmegaSin. Nerds, nerdettes, and gamers. Game the fuck